Good evening, welcome back to Marty's Tying Bench. I'm putting together Vice Squad kits, and this session we're going to tie what I call a bunny dragon. It's a dragonfly nymph. It's kind of an overlooked stillwater food source, and since they're a pretty good sized piece of meat, they're predators, so they expose themselves. They don't hide in the weeds so the fish can find them. You get some pretty vicious hits. You put one of these things on a sink tip and just ease it along the bottom in maybe 10 feet of water in the summertime, even shallower. Now, this is a Dairiki 730 size 8. That's a 2x long streamer hook. There are a lot of hooks that will work. These things, they live for 4, 5, 6 years, so there's all kinds of sizes in the water, but they seem to top out at about 1.5 inches, maybe a little less. So any hook that will give you just, a 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch to wrap the rabbit on will do. We're going to use some bead chain eyes. The eyes on these things are very, very prominent, so we're going to feature them. This is a black bead chain. I think they call this a size 6. See, I'm not worried about squaring those up. I'm making all of my wraps in the same direction and make sure I make them all the way from one bead to the other. Now that thread, when I start the other direction, is going to stretch a little bit. So I'll make 4 or 5 wraps, reach up and just kind of twist it towards square. Getting there. Okay, now they're squared up. Now I'm going to go underneath each bead and keep the thread on top of the hook. What that will do is tend to kind of bundle those fibers together and lock this in place so they won't spin. And if you feel like it, you can put a few more. We don't need that space, so you can fill it up with thread if you like. Okay, now these things are, the bugs are hollow. They use their body cavity to expel water so that they can dart, 5, 6 inches. So I'm going to put a little bit of flash in that will stick out the back and maybe kind of look like some air bubbles, or I don't know, just a tiny bit of flash. It's going to be covered up by rabbit. I'm going to cut that so that it's about the same length as the entire hook, and hopefully that will be the right length to just kind of stick out the back behind the rabbit. The rabbit is cross-cut. If you look at this piece of leather, all the hair is sticking out one side. That's the direction they cut it on the skin. Gives you that effect. So we want all of this to sweep back. Now you see where my thread is? It's forward of the barb. We could start all the way back here and we would get a dragonfly that was about 1.5 inches. I want to start up here. My dragonfly will only be about 1.25 inches. You can vary your length that way. As you see, it's no longer related to the length of the hook itself. I'm just going to start wrapping that. I'm going to tug on it pretty good to make sure that it's not going to come loose. If it comes loose now, you can salvage it. So I want to find out. Now each wrap of leather is overlapping the previous one at least a little bit. And then as I get towards the front, it's overlapping it a lot until my last wrap is right above the second to last. What that's going to do is get you a little more hair towards the front than there is towards the back, and that will give you that body shape we're looking for. Okay. Now I like to get in there with my fingernail clippers to save my scissor tips. We're going to cover that up with some thread so a little stub there doesn't hurt. but you can see we're getting the shape we like. Now I'm going to come back and go ahead and make some wraps over that rabbit, and then start dubbing. We're going to try a little bit of Crawdub here. I used to just cut up some rabbit and dub with that. It got kind of shaggy, but if you look at these nymphs, they're kind of a hard-bodied exoskeleton and a little bit slick. So I'd rather have something that's not quite so shaggy. We'll see what this looks like. Now the heads on these things are pretty big in front of a little slender portion of abdomen. So we're going to excuse me, fill that in pretty much between those eyes, and I'm not done dubbing there yet. But now that I've got a base, I'm going to tie in some legs, and you can get some Montana Fly Barred Sexy Legs. What I've done, if I've still got it here, is I just took a much easier to find sexy floss and just rubbed it with a black Sharpie to create that speckled effect. Now this thing always has a little bit of a natural curve to it, and I want that to curve to the inside just because I kind of like the final look. I'm going to tie that behind the eye so that it sticks out. And then as I come back with my thread wraps, see, I'm creating that kind of a black collar. That's going to, with looser wraps, that will help the rear legs sweep backwards. And cut that a little bit shorter than your rabbit. And then proceed to do that on the other side. Now if I get a fish that wants to count to 6 and is counting these legs, I'm in trouble, but I just go with 4. It's a little easier to tie, a little quicker. Alright, now I'm going to finish up with my dubbing. And I want that dubbing on there tight, so I keep the dubbing kind of thin. And I'll just make extra layers if I need them. And I expect I'm going to need a couple of applications of the dubbing here. This particular Crawdub dubbing is gray olive. You can tie this with the olive color, any olive dubbing that you like. Alright, now I'm just going to fill in as much as I can between those eyes. And about the time I run out of dubbing, I hope to end up right at the eye of the hook. And that's it. We got a bunny dragonfly. Take a look at the link for some neat video on these things and some clues on how to fish them. Have fun. 52 days till spring.